This video is brought to you by Blessed Be God Boutique, maker of Catholic fashionable apparel, handmade accessories, and more.
Pope Francis talks a good game about fixing the, we'll say, Ted McCarrick kind of problems in the church. Those wicked men who have no business being in the priesthood, who caused great harm to the church and to souls by causing great harm to human beings. This came to light in Boston 20 years ago, and it destroyed the credibility of the church in the eyes of many, causing countless souls to leave. Pope Francis became Pope partially because he promised to do something about it. And he has, to the casual observer, done a very good job on that. To anybody who actually is paying attention, you'll know that he keeps men like McCarrick very close to him. He has been known to protect men like McCarrick. And we have a story today that came and went in the news a few days ago because of the Synod on Synodality and because of the ramping up of the secular political season. It's worth your attention because this could turn into the biggest scandal Francis has faced yet. And that's saying something in the aftermath of Father Rupnik, who Francis did give his faculties back. You'll remember, a man who had a, we'll say, unhealthy, unchristian, and unpriest-like interest in nuns, and who did horrible things to them and with them, using mass implements in ways I can't even begin to bring myself to describe anywhere, let alone on YouTube. This is worse than that. Potentially. Less overtly satanic in a way that we are more accustomed to and almost numb to. But this is one of those stories that could, well, determine the next conclave, how it goes. And this is a story I don't think the Vatican wants most people to be paying attention to. So we turn to it now, which comes from us from Info Catholica. With this modified headline, we do have to be very careful talking about this story. McCarrick-type priest, suspended, rehabilitated, and suspended again. The Principi case and quote-unquote zero tolerance. This is a weird story about Cardinal Fernandez doing the right thing. Credit when it's due, even if his hand was forced to do so by circumstance. But this is a story that shows the internal battle going on in the Vatican at this time, between major players of the conclave that will choose Francis' successor to the papacy. The two figures are Cardinal Fernandez and Cardinal Pietro Parolin. Virtually no one thinks that Cardinal Fernandez has a chance to become the next Roman pontiff, and thanks be to God for that, honestly, but Parolin's name is one that keeps coming up as a potential successor. A John the 24th Pope, which is what a lot of people think he would take his name, he would in a lot of ways be as bad as Francis, if not worse. And make no mistake, Parolin lacks the charisma that John the 23rd had. Parolin is the one who reinstated the priest in question, and Fernandez is the one who said no when more evidence came to light. That does not mean that Fernandez was against reinstating the priest. That seems to be the official policy of Francis's Vatican, is mercy, 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 even to those who maybe justice is more applicable than mercy for the good of other people, because misapplying justice to a person can have grave harm and cause grave effects to other people who can be harmed by that person and to the church itself. This action was done by Pietro Parolin through one of his henchmen, Archbishop Edgar Peña Parra, giving Parolin himself plausible deniability. And in anything political, plausible deniability is important when you're going to do something, we'll say, unsavory. From Info Catholica, here's a short excerpt that drives this point home and gives us the basic facts of the story. Quote, "The case of the priest of Ariel Principi from the Diocese of Villa de la Concepción del Rio Cuarto has generated a notable stir both in the Church of Argentina and the Holy See. After being accused in 2021 of serious offenses of sins of the flesh involving people entirely too young for that sort of thing, and receiving a double sentence in ecclesiastical courts, a surprising decision by the Secretariat of State annulled his expulsion from the clerical state. However, on the grounds that new evidence appeared, presented in July 2024, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith finally ratified the conviction. Ariel Principi was sentenced in the first instance by the Interdiocesan Tribunal of Cordoba in 2023, and this sentence was confirmed in 2024 by the Interdiocesan Tribunal of Buenos Aires. Both tribunals concluded that Principi should be expelled from the clerical state, a decision that was notified by the Bishopric of Rio Cuarto and seemed final. However, on September 20th, 2024, the Vatican Secretariat of State, through Monsignor Edgar Peña Pera, decided to lift the sanction, imposing only minor restrictions on the priests, such as the prohibition of contact with people below a certain age and the limitation of his ministry to private celebrations. End quote. What's the point of that kind of priestly ministry? He can do other things in the Roman Curia. He could perhaps be given permission to work in prisons. He still can be functioning as a priest, a man who should in no way be a priest. And to say that this caused controversy is an understatement. The Cardinal Secretariat of State and potential future pontiff protected a Ted McCarrick-type priest who had already gone through the ecclesiastical courts and been found to have committed the unspeakably evil deeds that he's accused of. It took the writer of nasty, impure poetry who now promotes formal heresy from the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith to intervene and stop this process. This story made international headlines, but got swallowed up by the Synod coverage. And to be fair, when this was going on, the Synod was discussing decentralizing doctrinal authority to local national bishops' conferences, so Catholicism just becomes an international brand and not actually a coherent religion anymore. So it's understandable how the story might have gotten swallowed up, but it should not be forgotten. The Pillar here in the United States covered the story as well, with this headline: Why the Principi case matters. Why this matters is because if this story is true, this is titanic and could help at least keep Parolin from becoming Pope, if not keep Francis from being able to do anything else. Because it looks like Archbishop Peña Pera and Cardinal Pietro Parolin were doing this at the directions of Francis. Because of course they were. Quote, for years, officials in the DDF's disciplinary section have complained privately about attempted interference from the Secretariat of State in high-profile McCarrick cases. Often this is because local bishops will direct their own lobbying efforts via the papal nuncio, who in turn passes what he's asked or told up to the State Department in Rome. And it is possible that in the Principi case, the priest supporters among the Argentine episcopate did just that. Still, that goes nowhere to resolving the question of why this Sostituto took it upon himself to try to overturn an entire canonical process and convene his own. The more likely answer is that appeals on Principi's behalf were presented outside of any ordinary channel of communication and made their way to Pope Francis personally, who handed the matter off to his chief of staff with some instruction, either direct or implied, for Peña Pera to resolve the matter. Of course, if the Pope were to circumvent the entire canonical process for handling accusations of McCarrick-type evil deeds, a process he has staked much of his pontificate on strengthening, at least on paper, to reinstate a guilty priest as a favorite of friends, it would be a scandal of cataclysmic proportions for Francis. End quote. Kind of like what happened when he reinstated Father Marco Rupnik. Again, Rupnik was the founder of a society for women religious, for a group of nuns, and he was the priest who offered the sacraments for them. And he would use his authority as their spiritual father to get the nuns to violate their vows and with him. And then he incurred automatic excommunication because of the things he had them do with him involving implements for the holy sacrifice of the Mass and his use of the authority to absolve sins in the confession via the sacrament of penance, to absolve them of sins that they committed with him, which earns you automatic excommunication if you are a priest. Francis did that, and it caused a firestorm. And now we have another case of a priest doing, we'll say, things that are much more known in a mainstream sense. Everybody knows about the problems the church had suddenly uncovered by the media in the early 2000s, 20 years ago, up in Boston and in Ireland and any other place you care to name in the Western world. Men unfit to be priests placed in the priesthood, according to Bella Dodd, on purpose, for the purpose of bringing the Catholic Church down. And Francis has said that he takes a zero-tolerance approach to it, while then keeping these men in active ministry, sometimes sending them to be diocesan priests. Father Rupnik as a diocesan priest is a horrifying thought, but that's what he did. That is what Francis did, unequivocally. Can't be denied. It's in the public record. So this story cannot go away. God willing, it won't. And hopefully somebody in the Vatican, maybe Francis himself, will realize that sometimes there is a place for justice. That justice not only balances the scales of and doing what ought to be done, but it also protects others from having similar evil deeds done to them as well. And hopefully, maybe in this one case, he'll do the right thing. After all, Cardinal Fernandez stepped in when it looked like, when more evidence came to light that this man had done these evil deeds. He said no. And hopefully, Francis reinforces this with some harsher penalties for this priest. I'm not confident in that, though. Curious what you think about this, so let me know in the comments. Are you surprised that this may have come from Francis himself? He has a track record of it. That's why I reported it. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.